Singapore's housing system is incredible and messy. I recently went to Singapore with my friend Rowan and I decided to delve into their housing system. I've already made a video about their amazing MRT, but I always say that transport is inextricably linked to housing, and Singapore recognized that. After all, they aim to have 80% of households living within 10 minutes of an MRT station by 2030. A major part of that goal will be achieved through HDB. The Housing Development Board is Singapore's public housing agency that has built flats all over the island since the 1960s. What makes Singapore unique is that almost 80% of Singaporeans live in HDB. That's a stark contrast to other cities across the Anglosphere. Somehow, Singapore turned a construct usually seen as for the poor and disadvantaged into a tool for wealth creation for the aspirational middle class. This is the story of how Singapore achieved one of the highest home ownership rates in the world. But there's a catch, because this is also the story of how that system has become increasingly complicated, broken, and why it might just never work anywhere else. Before I continue, massive shout out to my monthly Patreon supporters. Please do consider supporting me over on Patreon if you can. Also, please subscribe if you haven't already, and do be sure to check out the rest of Building Beautifully, where I discover Sydney one story at a time. Back in the 60s, around the time that Singapore became its own country, Singaporeans weren't exactly living in luxury. Slums dominated the landscape. Then Prime Minister Lee Kuan Yew, basically the father of modern-day Singapore, was dedicated to turning everything around. Singapore's housing authority, the Housing and Development Board, was established in February 1960. In just 10 years, the HDB built 121,000 flats, a staggering figure. Lee Kuan Yew had a vision. He understood that a home-owning nation would be far more invested in the success of Singapore as a country, and just generally be better citizens. We will gradually create a society where every member has more stake in its security and its continued prosperity. It can be done. Interestingly enough, Robert Menzies had an almost identical vision for post-war Australia. This is why both men, incidentally their respective nations' longest-serving prime ministers, did everything they could to boost home ownership. And yet they set about achieving this dream very differently. Australia pursued private home ownership and built detached homes en masse. Meanwhile, Singapore set about acquiring land, building HDB for low prices through access to low-interest government loans and heavy subsidies. Over time, the HDB started moving towards town planning, literally creating satellite towns from scratch, such as Queenstown and Toa Payoh. These planning areas would be self-functioning, using the checkerboard model to intersperse high-rise residential developments with offices, parks, and hawker centres. Not only did this support self-sufficiency, but it encouraged a more appealing visual character. Relief was provided from clusters of towns, giving a greater sense of space. Everything was very rigidly planned, particularly in one unexpected regard. Singapore's HDB practices the ethnic integration policy, which dictates what percentage of a block or neighbourhood can be occupied by Singapore's three major ethnicities: Chinese, Malay, and Indian. This avoids ethnic enclaves building up in Singapore. This wouldn't work in many parts of the world, but it works in Singapore because they just happen to have three large ethnic groups. Public housing, racial quotas, high-rise towers that all look the same. This all feels very socialist. And to be clear, that isn't a bad thing. Rather, it's ironic because of the HDB's one key distinguishing feature. Residents don't rent their flat, they own it. The Singapore government themselves sell homes to residents, although homes are not owned indefinitely. They're on a 99-year lease. Here's an example of the prices for an HDB development in Singapore's north. You can get a 3-bedroom apartment for as low as $316,000. An absolute bargain by Australian standards. Singapore has managed to keep the dream of home ownership alive in 2026, even when it has died across so much of the world. How have they done this? Obviously, Singapore can somehow build homes far more cheaply. As I said earlier, HDB gets generous subsidies and loans from the government. On top of that, Singapore wins at land acquisition. From the 60s, Singapore acquired substantial amounts of land for well under market value, much of which was previously dilapidated slums. By 1985, the Singapore government owned 76.2% of the nation's land. Suffice to say, this alone saves the HDB a lot of money on construction, savings that are then passed on to buyers. Also, the government is uninterested in making a profit, prioritizing housing as a means of nation building. Not only does this mean prices can start far lower, but interest rates are also much lower than private banks, just 2.6% currently. Also, Singaporeans pay their homes back using their Central Provident Fund. Effectively a more aggressive form of Australia's superannuation, Singaporeans use their CPF to help pay off their home. So they're effectively required to save for a home. But the true genius of Singapore's public housing is what's excluded: the private market, where Singapore's remaining 20% live. Singapore's private market is extremely costly, with medians well and truly higher than Sydney. In my view, this means Singapore's very wealthy have their own market, meaning they don't compete with Singapore's middle class. Meanwhile, the middle class have something to aspire to, even if it's mostly out of reach. Foreigners obviously don't qualify for HDB, so if they want to buy homes in Singapore, they pay an exorbitant 60% stamp duty, money that likely goes to supporting HDB. The rich subsidize the rest and stick to their own playground. This is actually very similar to Australia's successful healthcare model.
Singapore is really good at building around transit. Every single one of Singapore's HDB towns has strong MRT access. Tanga, Singapore's newest town where a lot of new HDB is being built, is... Do my videos put you to sleep? This is an entirely natural response to watching building beautifully. Flipping through my videos has never been easier thanks to today's sponsor, Manta Sleep. I've been trying this mask out for a week now and it works really well. It's easy to put on with adjustable eye cups and a simple head strap. Cheap eye masks are, well, cheap, but they just don't cancel the light out as well as Manta Sleep's masks. This mask really cups around your eyes to give you darkness equivalent to the darkness I feel whenever I think of NIMBYs. Goddamn NIMBYs. A mask like this is especially helpful for shift workers like doctors. Sleep restfully during the day instead of sleeping at your desk at night, which is generally frowned upon by society. I actually got sent the sound mask, which comes with speakers, meaning I could listen to peaceful, calming sounds as I fall asleep. Not that I do that, but I could. Use the code beautifully at the checkout or follow the link in the top right or description to get 10% off your next Manta Sleep mask. Thank you to Manta Sleep for sponsoring this video. On paper, Singapore's HDB is literally perfect. You can end up living in a beautiful new apartment in a thriving community with abundant services, next to connected public transport for incredibly affordable prices by first world standards. Why doesn't every country do this? Well, because there's a catch. Unusually for public housing, because residents own their units, they can also sell their units. Welcome to the HDB resale market, where things get truly cooked. The median HDB resale in Singapore is $628,000. To put it another way, the median of Singapore's HDB resale market is $6,876 per metre square, while Sydney's apartments were at $7,656 per metre squared in 2024. Suddenly, Singapore is looking a lot more neck and neck with Sydney. In 2012, Singapore's first HDB sold for over $1 million in one of Singapore's first planned towns, Queenstown. That's no longer the outlier it once was. In 2022, there were 369. In 2025, there were 1,544. $1 million is unaffordable, out of reach for most Singaporeans. There are grants for HDB resales, but otherwise it operates effectively like a private market. This was Lee Kuan Yew's intention, to generate wealth for his citizens through property appreciation. But I'm sure he didn't have $1 million in mind when he made that speech in 1968. The resale market gets stranger. Because of the EIP, you can only buy from a household with your ethnicity, so that the HDB maintains the same ethnic ratio. I'm not a Singaporean citizen, but if I was, I could only buy from a flat with Indian ethnicity. This creates a problem unique to Singapore. An Indian household would have far less people to sell to because Indians make up only 9% of the country, so they'll likely make less money on an identical flat than a Chinese household. Indian owners lose money, but Indian buyers get a cheaper place to live. It's certainly weird. But hey, there's still new, cheaper HDB, right? Well, that market is also getting complicated. Singapore introduced the BTO system in 2001 to prevent oversupply, and it comes with its own complicated rules. When a new HDB plan drops, applicants enter a ballot. You're then randomly allocated a queue number, which dictates the order in which you get to choose a flat. So yeah, it's literally just luck. First-time buyers get an extra ballot, married couples and parents get an extra 2, families with 3 children get 10% of new flats reserved just for them. It's gotten so convoluted that I got all this information from pages telling Singaporeans how to optimize their chances of a good flat. Trust me, as an Australian, I'm used to seeing annoying blog posts telling me how to buy my dream home. It just feels kind of weird to see the same thing happening with public housing. HDB is meant to be a forever home, but more and more Singaporeans are selling their HDB after their minimum occupation period. 13.4% in 2021, double that of 5 years earlier. BTO homes in non-mature estates are often smaller and less conveniently located. So it's become a game. Get in on a less ideal BTO on Singapore's outskirts with poor MRT access, like Tengah. Serve your MOP, all the while watching your HDB appreciate in value. Sell and use the profit to buy a better HDB on the resale market, or even try your luck at the private market.
You just need to understand that buying a BTO flat is a stepping stone to your 2 greatness condos after MOP. Don't be trapped by MOP for so long, so try to choose those with the regular MOP period, which is 5 years.
The crazy thing is, this is exactly what we see in Australia, hopping from less desirable to more desirable suburbs through property appreciation. Residents count on their homes going up in value to achieve this, and that's what drives up prices. It's crazy that Singapore's real estate market operates on a near identical dogma, even though theirs is much more government controlled. Also, if you're not in a relationship, a heterosexual relationship, you have to wait until you're 35 before you can purchase an HDB unit. Because the private market is so expensive, singles are pretty much forced to stay at home until they're 35, or married. People have pursued marriages of convenience to try and get around this. Obviously these are illegal, so I doubt they're widespread, but it does prove how desperate young Singaporeans are getting. But remember, no Singaporean technically owns an HDB flat because of the 99-year lease. No flat has reached its end, but because of that, the government have not made it clear what exactly will happen. Sure, they probably can't kick everyone out, but the government has made it clear they don't want to bail anyone out either. At any rate, all this uncertainty affects the resale market. No young person would want to buy a flat with a lease that expires in, say, 30 years. What are they meant to do at the end of it, when it reaches $0? This leaves seniors without their retirement plan, without the ability to leave their flat or downsize, which unnecessarily locks up supply. Maybe this is part of the plan. It dampens property speculation, after all. But, I mean, that only works until like 2060, when the government has to reveal their plan. Take a look at it all. A convoluted ballot system entirely based on luck. A resale system that rivals Sydney prices. A system that punishes you for being single. A nation that somehow created a real estate bubble from public housing. And underneath it all, a 99-year ticking time bomb. Suffice to say, Singapore's HDB isn't the golden bullet we're looking for. Singapore's HDB set out to house an entire population, and it's done that very well. But it also served to generate wealth for the aspirational, and with it has come all the complications of a private market. If instead Singapore had just rented these homes out, would things have turned out better? I don't really think so. Call me a capitalist, but Singapore's success is definitely tied to a population invested in its success. They work harder, they have skin in the game. They want to see their country succeed because, as Lee Kuan Yew said, they have a stake, a home. This is what nations like Australia are increasingly forgetting. Renters aren't as invested in their nation's success because they don't own the roof over their head. That's where protest votes and political disillusionment stem from. I admit, your mileage may vary on this take, but that's my opinion. So I want to be very clear. In my opinion, Singapore still wins because entering the housing market still remains quite doable, particularly by Western standards. It may not be where you want it, it may take years of ballot entries, you might need to wait till you're 35, but you'll eventually get in and pay far less than similar countries. It's a flawed system, but trust me, I'd take the Singaporean system over the Australian system any day. So let's implement it in Australia. Well, remember, the Singaporean government owns 76.2% of Singapore's land. This is the true secret to the HDB's success. Land costs comprise a substantial amount of a property's value, often more than half. Singapore bought a lot of this land for pennies in the 60s, under urgent nation-saving circumstances, and it's been relying on that ever since. And this is why Singapore's public housing model probably won't work anywhere else. No other global government has anywhere near as much public land, thereby eliminating the ability to build public housing for cheap. This is all to say, Australia probably cannot replicate what Singapore has, but we can do so on a smaller scale. For example, Landcom, the New South Wales equivalent of the Housing Development Board, owns a lot of land around train stations. In an ideal world, as a public developer, Landcom would build homes here, 100% subsidised housing. Like Singapore, it would be owned by residents. Get a wait list, let people in by income, and let things go from there. But, it gets tricky really fast. Singapore builds HDB on scale, and yet even they are struggling to keep up with demand. Swapping from a private to a public market just means swapping from exorbitant mortgages to long wait lists. Neither one resolves the root issue: excess demand. This is all to say, I've never really been fussed about whether the public or private market solves the housing crisis. I've always seen it as a bit of a distraction, arguing over what colour the fire truck should be while the house is ablaze. We need supply. There's two things the world can learn from Singapore. Obviously, build around transit. But more importantly, housing is a right, a fundamental part of a successful democracy. Take that away from people and they become disillusioned, angry. Give people something to aspire to, and you can create a truly happy, thriving society. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.
So Rowan, what's your thoughts on the chicken rice?
Honestly, I'm just so appreciative of this bird right here.
What the hell am I watching? I'm gonna go through that to a parallel universe.